the principle section of the course. So this is our first section that we're going to look into. Now, as you know, there are 7 principles, and in fact, there are also 7 questions in the exam. So it's a good idea to know principles. Now, how will I do this? Well, I will start off with some very general questions on principles to make sure we all have a good understanding, and then I will go into more normal questions. And like you'll see, I will ask Nader some questions. Hopefully he will answer correctly. And then we can go on to the next question.
Okay.
It's a good way to work. So, Nader, in my first question, I'm going to read actually a definition from PRINCE2, and then I'm going to ask questions on that. Okay, so PRINCE2 says that the principles are guiding obligations that determine whether the project is genuinely being managed using PRINCE2. Okay. What does that really mean? And why are principles important?
Well, there's this problem. You go to a company and you see, for example, they claim to be using PRINCE2 or the PMBOK guide or something else. And all they do is that they've taken a few names for different documents from that source and just filled it in. It doesn't have any impact on what they do. Or you go and see many people who claim to be agile. Okay. They are just using the labels, the rituals. They don't understand what's happening behind the scenes. They don't understand the real goals, the real purposes in what they are doing. And so they don't get anywhere with it. But in PRINCE2, the principles are a reminder for the purpose of different things. It's not about having certain documents. It's not about having certain roles. It's about getting somewhere. It's about satisfying certain principles. That's how I see it. It's, I think did you talk about the cargo cult in the foundation course?
No, I did not.
That's really the cargo cult. That's the
Explain
problem.
the cargo cult.
Well, during the World War, the first one or the second one?
Second World War.
Or both of them? Second one. Okay.
We had more airplanes in the Second World War, so it fits better.
Yeah. Maybe you want to
and they were in the Pacific, yeah. Go on.
You go on.
No.
Okay, so there were these islands where people were completely isolated from the rest of the world. And all of a sudden, some of the soldiers from the US, I think, go and create a base in their island. And every once in a while, cargo planes used to come and bring them different things they needed. And those soldiers used to give out some of the things they didn't need or trade it with the natives, and natives really liked it. It was really fancy things for the first time for those people. And the concept that something that human beings have made is flying and landing in their island, that was magical for them. But then the war was over, which was really great for everyone, but they were not so happy about it. They decided to fix that problem. But what did they do? They created a mock-up of an airport, the runway, the tower, everything that used to be there. And their idea was that that's the concept that brings planes to their island. And of course, it never happened. But the point is that those natives didn't understand how planes work. They only saw what was on the surface. And that's the same. Sometimes people who don't know enough about project management, they go to a company, they see that people have certain rituals or certain documents, and they think that if they have the same documents, they will have a successful project. But that doesn't happen. That's a cargo cult. And the principles in PRINCE2 is a way that we can avoid that cargo cult.
Is that a bit like people asking, oh, what templates do you use, or what software do you use? And if I'm just using that, then I'm doing it correctly. It's the most common question I get.
The templates, it drives me crazy. People are looking for templates all the time. But when you think about PRINCE2, for example, In the manual itself, you have product descriptions for management products. Do they still have it in the new
Yes,
version?
yes.
Okay. You have the product descriptions. It explains what you need to have in each of those management products. For example, if you're thinking about the business case, what are the building elements of an appropriate business case? And that's more than enough. That tells you the purpose of the business case and everything that can contribute to that purpose. But then instead of that, people go and download the template and just force themselves to fill in the template and just set it aside. Nothing happens.
Yeah, they make it available, but no one reads it at times as well.
Because you can't also expect people to read it because there's not enough thought behind that. It was just to check a box that we also have a business case.
Okay. Now, thank you, Nader. There are 7 principles, okay? I know you've done a lot of extra work on principles. It's part of what you do. Can you give me just an example of an extra principle that's not in PRINCE2, but people should keep in mind anyway? It's another good principle to have.
I can use some time for that. But there's one I really like, and it's one of the Noob principles. We don't have it directly in PRINCE2. PRINCE2 principles are more concrete, but Noob is a little more abstract. And it's about being proactive.
Okay.
You should always be proactive. But no, my favorite, something that is more important.
Yeah,
and it also relates to what we were talking about. That's why you mentioned
Yeah.
it. Okay. Don't do anything without a purpose.
Correct. Yes, that's it. Everything starts with a purpose. Always ask, what's the purpose?
Yeah.
If anybody comes with an idea or a suggestion, the first thing you should ask is, what's the purpose? Because it frames everything, and then your whole conversation follows on. Now I'm answering a question I just asked. So you can finish it off.
Why do you need me? Yeah, that's important because, for example, you're the project manager and someone, the sponsor or someone else who's really powerful, comes to you and says, I want you to do this. And some project managers just go and do that. But when you hear something like that, the first thing you have to ask is, okay, why? What's the purpose? And there's a big difference because when people don't understand the purpose, they can do something that is really unrelated. That was the joke.
Are we allowed to do jokes?
Polite ones.
Okay.
Someone sends her spouse a text message saying that when you're coming back home, please buy a carton of milk, and if they have fresh eggs, get 6. So he comes back home with 6 cartons of milk. She says, why 6? I asked you for 1. And he says, well, they had fresh eggs. That's exactly what happens when people don't understand the purpose. This one was really obvious, but sometimes you deliver something that seemingly satisfies the purpose, but it's not the purpose they had in mind. Instead of talking about the output, we do better talking about the purpose and goal and outcome of things.
I just thought of something else. It's not written down, but another advantage of principles is that if you keep them in mind, it helps you make good decisions. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to expand on that?
Or, for example, whenever you have a difficult decision to make, you can just go and review all the principles and see whether or not you're missing anything. Because it sooner or later it becomes
Norm?
a norm. You do it automatically. But still, for more difficult ones, it's better to do it consciously.
Yeah.
That's
So principles are guidelines, and they also help you to make better decisions. Is that a good way to sum it up? Great. How big does a project have to be before you start using the principles?
If you want to use PRINCE2, you have to use the principles. If you don't use the principles, you're not using PRINCE2. And it doesn't matter how big or small the project is. The tailoring, the whole idea about tailoring, that's about the concrete aspects of PRINCE2. It's about the documents you have, the names, the processes, and so on. but the underlying principles are always the same, and you should always have them in any type of project.
Suppose if a project manager has to take over a project, and one of the first things they do is to say, hey, I'm going to do a quick health check on this project, and I'm going to use the 7 principles to do my health check. Is that a good idea? I think it is. But now
Okay, go on. No, I'm just thinking how
Well-
you would go about it.
Well, so for example, the first principle I think is that every project must have a business justification. So you check and you say, okay, well, do we have business justification? Where is it? Can I read it and understand it? And if it does, it's a health check on the project.
And
as
whether
well.
or not we continually check it to see whether we have to stop the project or go on with the
Yeah.
project. Yeah.
And for each principle, we can ask a relating question, and which will give us more information about the project and help us to decide, if something should be fixed or not. That's good.
Yeah. Or learn from experience. Then
Yes.
you would go and check. How would you do that? See whether
Well-
they've tried to extract lessons from previous projects.
Yeah. Ask, where's the lessons we gathered from previous projects? I'd like to see that. And how are we learning each month? Are we having a small conversation at the end of each stage to see if there's something that we can pick up on, some lessons we can pick up on, and then make use of those lessons during the rest of the project? I think that would be good.
Yeah. You would be looking for a lessons log.
Yeah.
Or it might be tailored and have a different name or combined with something else.
Yes.
Do you want to review all the principles and see how you would do that, the audit?
No, might take a bit long. So now, what are the most important principles and why?
Well, when we say that we must have each and every one of them, then it's a little bit difficult to say which one is more important. Because when you say which one is more important, we usually do that in order to know how to sacrifice if we have to, but we're not supposed to.
So they're like children then. There should be no favorite. Yeah.
In
Okay.
theory.
All right. Good. Now let's go into the principles themselves. So the
Was that
first-
also your answer? Is that
Yeah.
the
Yes.
Prince
Of
to
course.
expect?
Yeah. They're all the same. Yeah. Just like a catch question. I was trying to catch you out.
Okay.
Um,
But you can have a favorite. Do you have a favorite?
Well, for example, in NUP, which stands for Nearly Universal Principles, I do have a favorite. It's the purpose. So probably business justification has to be it, because it's the whole reason, and the amount of waste of money and investment and time and energy if you're working on a project that has no value. So that's the driving force behind the project, and because it's a principle, it has to be more important as well. Yeah. Even though everyone is equal.
Actually, it's interesting because the continued business justification, was that the actual name in PRINCE2?
I have to double check. Ensure continued.
Ensure.
to do.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was the old name. This
Yeah.
one is much better. It's unified. Uniform, I mean, all the principles. This has a lot to do with the purpose principle in NOOP. Because when you're paying attention to the business justification of the project, you're actually paying attention to the purpose of the project. You go beyond
point, yeah.
making sure that time and cost and scope and so on is okay. So you favor the same thing in different resources.
Good. So my first question is, well, the first principle is, we call it ensure continued business justification. Can you give me some clarity on what is business justification? What does that actually mean?
Why are we doing the project from a business perspective? So, for example, for this course, it's really simple. We will earn money. No shock here.
We have bills to pay.
Yeah. But also, we don't give, for example, classroom courses. But for people who do also give classroom courses, they may say, Because of this e-learning course, I will have more chances to give classroom courses because more people will know that I'm a trainer and I'm a good trainer and so on. So for those people, that can also be a justification, a benefit. And if you really like to give presentations in different conferences, this is also something helpful. More people.
So we get known, you mean?
You will get known, yes. Okay. More opportunities, and then you can quantify those opportunities. And the combination of all of those things will be your business justification. So, for example, yes. It can be a lot of things. For example, someone may be really concerned about the real nature of PRINCE2. And that person wants to create a course to really explain it to everyone how PRINCE2 is supposed to work. It's not about filling in documents. It may be important for that person to help PRINCE2 in somehow. That can also be a business case for a business justification for creating the course.
Okay. So just to recap then, so business justification is key. When do we start thinking about business justification, and how often should we think about it?
Well, we do it before we start the project.
Really?
Well, we won't think about running the project unless we have an idea. Well, sometimes people don't do it explicitly, and they don't do it in a structured way, but they never start a project without thinking that it may be a good idea to run the project. When they think about that, that's thinking about business justification.
Okay. So we think about it at the beginning, and we think about it during the project as well. We are checking to see, does the project still have business justification?
Yes. At the end of each stage, we do it when we update the plans.
Yeah.
And there's also managed by exception that has to do with business justification. So if there's an issue or anything that changes the variables above the threshold, we will update everything, and that includes the benefits, and ask the project board whether or not we have to continue.
Good. Suppose if there's a factory, and it's processing a lot of equipment, and it deals with a lot of water coming in and going out, but there's a new law that's coming out from the government, and so it's a compulsory project that they have to change something, and it's going to cost them like 200,000 or 300,000 in order to invest to meet these changes. So this, because it's compulsory, where's the business justification in that project then?
That's really easy. We have to ask ourselves. I know that some people have difficulty understanding the business case there, but it's not comparing the world where we have done the project with now. It's comparing that world with the same world in the same time when we have not done the project. If we don't do the project, maybe we are not allowed to continue that service anymore, or something like that. How much money do we lose if we stop providing that service? That's the justification for this project. And that's actually important to consider, because sometimes companies just continue adjusting to different regulations and new things in the market because they think they should. But in reality, if they compare it and see what the true justification is, sometimes they may see that it's maybe better to stop providing that old service and go on with something new. But the whole idea here is that we have to do it consciously and not based on our feelings, but at least simple calculations. That makes a big difference.
So a good recap then would be they do it because they can keep operating, because maybe the law, they're not allowed to operate anymore, so then they will lose their business. That would be terrible. Or fines as well. They start getting fines or bad press because they're polluting the local river or something like that as well. So that all builds into the justification. All right, great. Now, when we speak about business justification, we're always speaking about the main project itself. But if we are, let's say, building a sports center for a city, and we have a big construction company, that construction company will also have a big justification to work on the project as well. Now, so they will have their own business case. Let's say that during the project, the reason why this construction company participated in the project because they were going to have a margin of about 30%. But they find out a quarter way into the project that their margin is going to go to minus 10%. What should they do?
They have to stop working.
They have to stop working.
Yeah, that's a trigger for stopping the work, but you never stop suddenly. You go on and start talking to your customer and say, see, this is how it goes. I started to have a profit of 30% and now I see that I will lose 10% money. Is there something you can do, or should I just stop working? I will pay the penalties and stop working for you. And a lot of times a good customer understands and helps. I've seen it in the past a lot.
Yeah. Obviously the contract is will guide what you're going to what to do there. Yeah. Okay, great. Our next principle is learn from experience, which we've actually just mentioned on as well. So I'm going to start with a scenario here. So let's say we have a scenario where a bank is creating a mobile application, and the IT manager the project manager has a lot of good IT experience. And they say, well, there's no need for this principle on this project because based on my experience. Is that a good idea?
Well, the experience that the person has, if the person really has that experience, is a way of learning from experience. That is what we talk about here. Yeah. But in general, what we talk about in projects is not personal knowledge management, but knowledge management across people who work in a company, because one person may be not careful enough or they may leave the company. So we document what we've learned and we distribute it in the company so that others can learn and also use it. And if someone thinks that they know everything there is, the person is a little bit dangerous. We can always benefit from using other people's experience.
Yeah, because it's not just the technical part. Yeah. It's how to deal with different departments, how things work in the company. Those are all lessons. It's not just lessons for the technical stuff. Yeah,
working with people. That's the main thing in projects. It's the technical aspect of the project is not the most difficult part. It's dealing with all different people, the contradictions they have, and so on.
Good. Okay, I have to read the next one here. So, a question. As the project is small with one on-site team, the project manager says that lessons can be discussed at regular team meetings. So less formal and more informal. Is that okay? Like every, let's say, month to get together or every 2 weeks, and the project manager can ask a question, okay, what lessons do we have learned? Or should we use a more formal approach?
Well, it depends on what you mean by formal, but it's okay to discuss it in a meeting. That's very good, actually. But there's one thing here remains. When they do it, they talk about it. They are sharing their experiences inside the team, which is good. But are they also sharing it in the whole company with other people? Probably not. In some, for example, agile projects, everything is limited to what happens inside the team, and that's not enough. That's a pity. There are lots of opportunities there. So how can we do that? A typical thing is maybe you can review the lessons in that meeting, and if a lesson is really interesting, you can write it down and submit it somewhere. It can be a wiki, it can be a forum on the company, or maybe a bigger meeting at the end of the month for everyone in the company. Although that also helps spreading it in the company now, but it won't work for the future. We also want to send it to the future people.
So what you're saying is, if we have 2 or 3 lessons, one lesson can stand out more than the others, and that can be nominated as a lesson to share or to document and to share with other people. Would that kind of approach work? Because lots of lessons which don't add value are not probably a good idea. People won't read them anymore. So we should be able to prioritize them a little bit as well.
Yeah. Anytime we are working on an issue or a deliverable work package, let's call it based on Prince2, we are generating lessons. The history of what we've done on that thing is a lesson learned. But most of them, as you said, is not that special.
Yeah.
So we have to pick those that are special and send them especially to other people in the company now and in the future. But still, when we also have our historical information easy to access, something that may not seem important to us right now may turn out to be important in 3 or 4 years from now. And people who are working on different projects that are similar to this, later on they can come back and see what did they do with that thing that may work very well and easy for us, but for them it's causing problems. They can come and see our documents, see how it was done, and that works like a lesson learned.
Good. Another question. The project executive, which is actually the new name for the executive, now he has a double name, he has a conversation with the project manager at the very beginning of the project, and he says lessons are really important, but we only have to do this at the beginning of the project. Spend time on this. Is that a good idea? It sounds great.
It helps a little, but it's not enough. So you are using lessons generated in other projects, but you're not going to generate lessons for other people. That's really selfish.
Yeah. So we should be looking for lessons all the way during the project.
Yes.
Okay, good.
And do we have a lot of questions? Shall we have a coffee?
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea.
But if you want, we can finish one of the principles and then have a break.
Well, actually, that's my last question on lessons. One jumped into my mind just a second ago, and now I've forgotten it, but I'm sure that it wasn't important anyway.
Oh.
So we've covered learning or learn from experience, I think, quite well. Good.
I also have something, because we talked about templates, and every time I talk about templates, there's someone who brings the case about templates, and it's about templates you create in the organization, which is really different from what we were talking about before.
Okay.
Having templates in the organization can be helpful. The thing that we were talking about, I just remembered before people object. What we were talking about was that people who have no idea how to do something, they just go on the web, search for a template and fill it in and put it somewhere, and it doesn't work. But when people inside an organization work together to create the same way of working, a purposeful way of working, and then decide to have uniform documents and create templates for that, that can work. Other than that, templates won't work.
Thank you. And now I've thought of my question. Good. So, lessons learned, we all know, are really important. Gathering lessons and following up on lessons and making sure that people are aware of them. But there's also something called peer reviews. Can you explain what a peer review is and how it complements lessons? 'Cause it's a kind of for me, it's like an upfront lessons. Before you make the mistake, you even learn about something.
Yes, it's before the fact. There's just one thing. Lessons are not always based on failures.
Correct. You don't always have to make the mistake.
Yeah, sometimes you do something and at the end you say, wow, you are so great. It went really well. How come it worked so well? And your answer to that would be the lesson. It can work actually. For a good project manager, they should not limit themselves to negative lessons. There are lots of positive lessons. We do it a lot. We see it a lot.
That's a good point.
Yeah. But still, what happens is that there's the fact, and after the fact, we have the lesson. Fact that is for ourselves. But sometimes we can have peer reviews, which means that before reaching the event, whatever the event is, you can ask someone else, a peer, to come and look at it with you. So for example, you are a project manager, you want to submit your stage plan to project board But before doing that, you want to make sure that you're not missing anything. So you call another project manager who works in a different project and doesn't have anything to do with you to come sit with you and take a look. There are lots of problems we can find that way. And prevent problems. Now, what happens here is that we are using the experience that other person has. That's one thing. And then these two people learn from each other. But the other thing that is important is sometimes you know the thing, you make mistakes. That's not because of lack of knowledge, but mistakes just happen. And you may not be able to see it because you're too close to the work.
Yeah, too close is really the key. You're looking at the same mistake all the time and you just don't see it anymore. Yeah. One thing I'd like to say as well about peer review is that people get the impression that you're asking somebody from advice and you are learning from them, but they are also learning from you because they can see, oh, you've done something like that. I can borrow that for my next stage as well. So it's very good sharing back and forth, and then whatever input they give you, you can use that immediately. I like to call it just-in-time fixes or just-in-time improvements that you can make. So when you then deliver that stage document, as you said, it's much better than you had before. So it's a good idea. And it's a good way to finish up on this principle as well.
Yeah, I need coffee.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.